All righty.
Not yet. Wait. Go.
Well, welcome everyone. For those of you on the East Coast, on the West Coast, and in between, welcome to the Truth Commission, Recharge Genocide. Systemic poverty in all its forms is violence. And caregivers will be speaking out during this time. Really powerful testimony. My name is Margaret Prescott. I'm on the board of the National Welfare Rights Union. I'm also with Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike, and just delighted to welcome our MC for the rest of the program. Michelle, take it away.
Thank you, Margaret. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to be your mistress of ceremonies. I'm Michelle Tingling Clemons. I'm a founding member of the National Welfare Rights Union. I come there from the National Anti-Hunger Coalition, and since then, I've become the co-convener of Gray Panthers in Metropolitan Washington, and I work in the area of hunger and public health care, fighting for both for all. We have an exciting program tonight, and I'm so glad that you're able to join us in this. We're going to hear, as our presenter said earlier, we're going to hear from people, victims of poverty from around the country. And they're going to speak to you from their own lived experience about what has been going on in their lives. And many of you will find some resonance with that in your own lives. But what we're here to talk about is not just what the problem is, but what it is people have been doing and what it is we want to do about it. So with no further ado, I want to introduce you to the president of the Michigan Welfare Rights Organization, the eminent Maureen Taylor, otherwise known popularly as Miss Mo, both for the lessons, the poignant lessons that she delivers and the fierceness with which she fights for our liberation. Maureen Taylor is from Detroit, Michigan, and she is an able representative of the Motor City. Take it away, Maureen.
And thank you so very much to my colleagues that have already started this program off with a bang. Marion has asked me to offer her apologies. She had a little bit of a procedure, unexpected procedure this morning, and she's still dealing with anesthesia and those kinds of things. And so we're going to excuse her for just a little bit. And she asked me to start my comments that'll be quite short, to give a little bit of history of the National Welfare Rights Union. Back in 1966 in Syracuse, New York, a number of activists, organizers, welfare recipients came together in New York. A call went out across the nation, and one of the names that was involved in that organizing drive-by is, I don't want to say drive-by, in that organizing drive is a guy by the name of George Wiley. And some of you may be aware of a lady by the name of Maya Wiley, who's a contributor to MSNBC. And that's his daughter. Well, George and other folks called individuals from across the country together. And the focus was, what can we do? What should we be doing around the horrible ways that welfare recipients were being treated? And in that conversation, the breakout discussions, of course, went to what are we going to do around poverty? And the breakout discussions there went to, like what Michelle has mentioned, we've got too many people that are hungry. We got too many people that are homeless. We have too many people that are not able to keep body and soul together. And we're talking about primarily women and children, men and children. And what is it? From the voices of the oppressed and the dispossessed, what can we do? Well, that grouping of people, for however long they had that conference in Syracuse, when they left there, the birth of a welfare rights voice was started to be lifted. We come from a generation of fighters. One of the particular fighters, Ms. Johnny Tillman, raised this question of, let us pay attention to the voices of the victims. The voices of the victims, they can tell you what their issues are better than anyone else. And she was absolutely correct. So with that model, the voices of the victims of poverty, it was so many of those early people that took that theory and said, how can we lift the voices of the actual victims of poverty? And as you all know, poor people always assume that they're the most backwards. They assume that they're the most unintelligent. They feel that they're the most unable to talk about the problems that they have. So there was immediately, I wasn't involved at that time, but there was an immediate push to make certain that the victims of poverty were pushed to the forefront and getting prepared and training themselves and training others to be the spokespersons of the kinds of lives and the kinds of circumstances that they were having to live through. So the history of welfare rights is grounded in that fight against poverty, grounded in that fight to try to become experts and visionaries and poverty scholars around this question of class. What does that mean to be in a working class? We as you go forward from 66 to 76 and 86 and 96 and the different groupings that were part of welfare rights in different parts of the country. Certainly the regional areas had a lot to produce. My colleagues that have already spoken, Michelle and Rick, that come from the DC area, as long as I've known them, have been trying to get Washington, DC to be a state in the union. And that battle continues. My colleague Margaret out on the West Coast, as long as I've known her, trying to get these caretakers on board and able to speak and pushed up front. This has been our life's work. Viola's on this call from New Orleans, as long as I've known her. It's been that kind of battle to raise the voices of the victims of poverty. And we've done an outstanding job. And that's how we got Carolyn. And we found her along the way to raise the voice of youth and how this country has a debt to pay. You know, we're tired of these checks being written, like Dr. King used to say, and you get those checks back and they say insufficient funds. So as we present a bevy, a plethora, see how we learned all those big words? We got a bevy, a plethora of information that we are going to present over the next 90 minutes or so that lived experiences can be used. The Truth Commission is a tool that welfare rights uses in an effort to push forward the actual voices of the victims of poverty. And we've got an array of voices that are going to make their presentations known and discuss what's paramount. And here's another big word, salient to the victims of poverty and how we can go forward. My name is Maureen Taylor. I am state chairperson of the National Welfare Rights Organization. And I will step back so that the next part of this presentation can go forward. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Mo. You see why I say she's fierce. So y'all just remember that name now. You're going to be hearing more about it later. As we move into our testifiers, I just want to say that say a brief statement about the National Welfare Rights Union and what our goal is. We the poor are organizing for universal human rights. We have been pushed to the edge by inequality, not by scarcity. The only scarcity has been of will and know-how. In a world of abundance, we are fighting for the cooperative future of our class, the working class, and our planet. The right to fare well is the defining issue of our time, and we are uniting the poor as a transformative social force to end poverty. You are about to hear in this next section of the program from seven freedom fighters, people who are caretakers speaking out, as our theme is for tonight. And I'm just gonna identify them by name and where they're from. They will tell you about themselves and the struggle in which they are engaged as they speak. You will hear from Kathy Klein from El Monte, California, from Marie Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania, from Alex from San Francisco, from Anita Ross from New Orleans. You're going to hear Sydney reading the anonymous testimony on housing in the Bay Area. You'll hear from Jane in Berkeley, and you'll also hear from Carolyn Hill out of Philadelphia, PA. So go on, freedom fighters, enlist people in our cause. Kathy.
So we'll go to Kathy.
Kathy is AOL.
Kathy, if you're on mute, come off mute.
Oh, okay. I'm off. Sorry. Okay. Hi. My
Hi.
name is Kathy Klein. Oh God, I got lost my place here. Okay. Hi, my name is Kathy Klein, and I am a mother with a disability, and I want to share my experience being homeless and dealing with child welfare system. I was sick, hospitalized, and unable to pay my rent and became homeless. My 13-year-old son and I had nowhere to live. So we went to the downtown shelter for women and children for assistance, begging them to house me and my son. And still, instead of providing us with emergency shelter, they call LA Department Children and Family Service, placed us with a church up in Ashnot. I was sent to the women's home, and my son was sent to the youth home. We only saw each other only on Sunday afternoon after church. The church require mothers to sell candy 8 hours every morning until 8 o'clock at night to able them to stay in the shelter. The church used the fundraising to pay mortgages. As I refused to sell candy, I was given the job to watch the kids at the shelter. One day they wanted me to join selling candy. I went along and took a bus back to LA. I went back to the welfare office, social worker, to get help to bring my son back with me. But all of a sudden, he had to stay up there, and they put him in a foster home. I had to come back and forth up there to go to court in Arsenal to get my son. But DCFS never offered me any help. So the police went and got my son. I didn't have funds to go to get him because I was down in LA. So after a while, I had to go back up there for court. So I decided to return to LA finally to receive help at the Union Shelter in Pasadena. They had got me housing. I had a 2-bedroom apartment for me and my son. But having a 2-bedroom apartment wasn't enough for the Ventura County Child Protective Services. Why are resources fund to pay for children court for foster care, but not to keep families together? Bus fare and help with housing could have cost taxpayer a lot less than foster care for my son. For 4 years, LA had a housing crisis for low-income people. LA child welfare system needs to what is that? Okay, and
They
I
need
was
to give you
glad
some
that
help.
to get me some
Prioritize.
help. Yeah, with LA, and they was the only one that was helping me. And I'm down here in LA, and my son is up there in Austin, so I had to go back and forth up there for 6 months. And this went on for 4 years for 6 months. And I was glad to dispute this system set up for you to fail. Well, the system is set up for you to fail because they really failed me. They didn't even help me when I was up there in Austin. And they was telling me that I had so many places that I had lived here, there, and everywhere. And I told them, I said, well, I only moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. So wherever you thinking I done been all over the world at living is not true. That's what you guys are saying.
All
And then
right.
working together with others with experience like mine had helped to give me strength. We need to stick together and fight this through.
Thank you. Yeah.
That
Thank you,
yeah.
Kathy.
You're welcome.
Okay, Marie.
Hi, I'm Marie Fitzpatrick from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I first went on Medicaid when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. I was receiving my prenatal care at a city public health center, and the social worker referred me to both Medicaid and the WIC program. After I stopped working, I applied for welfare as well. Because I was living with my daughter's father, I was not eligible for food stamps because we shared a kitchen. I met women from the Wages for Housework campaign when Danielle was 6 months old. I started working with them on having women's unwaged caring work recognized and counted in the GDP, the gross domestic product, and dignified with a wage. After my second daughter was born, I was harassed by my caseworker, who insisted that I was in a common law marriage, even though I used my own name, filed my own tax return, and gave my children my last name. A welfare investigator made a credit inquiry using my first name and Daryl's last name and created an alias with the credit bureau, which still shows up today as an alias on my credit report. He tried to use that as proof that Daryl was my husband. I explained that because I was not married to Daryl, his health insurance did not cover me, and I needed medical assistance. I also needed the $200 per month cash assistance to have some money of my own, since I wanted to breastfeed and take care of my own children. And welfare was the only wage for housework that we had in the US. Because I was still breastfeeding my youngest daughter, who was a toddler, the nutritionist at my WIC office recommended me for a breastfeeding counselor training course to become a WIC peer counselor. I became an enthusiastic breastfeeding advocate and encouraged pregnant women to consider breastfeeding when they came in for their WIC appointments. Since 2 of the WIC offices were in local hospitals, a lactation consultant who was a nurse mentored me, and I also got to visit WIC clients on the postpartum floor and help them initiate breastfeeding with proper positioning. I loved the work, but found it to be frustrating that so many women would tell me that they couldn't even start breastfeeding because they had to return to work within 2 to 6 weeks. And the jobs they were returning to at Walmart or McDonald's would allow no time or space for them to pump their milk. There was no welfare program that most women could afford to live on to be able to stay at home with their babies and breastfeed. The US has no paid maternity leave that nearly every other country in the world has, because we devote so much money to the war budget. When federal funding was cut from the peer counselor program, I was laid off. I started subbing as an instructional assistant for special needs children for the Lower Merion School District. As a sub, I received no employee benefits and qualified for medical assistance and food stamps since my daughter's father had moved to Hawaii. My daughters are now grown and on their own. I now receive Medicare with extra help from the state to pay the Medicare premium each month. I also receive Social Security retirement benefits. I qualify for the minimum food stamps for a household of one, which has been enhanced during the COVID pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Appreciate that. And especially appreciate you sharing that journey. And now we'll hear from Alex.
Hello.
Hey.
Yes. Okay. Hi, my name is Alex, and I am a biracial, gender fluid person born and raised in San Francisco. When I was a teenager, I became involved in the underground street economy shortly after I started middle school when my parents had divorced. My mother became a single mom. Eventually, my mother lost her job and we struggled with poverty. I ran away when I was 14 and I started to sell drugs to support myself. I was not able to get a legal job because I was underage, and most of my friends who could work did not make enough money for all of us to survive. So we sold drugs to help supplement the cost of living. Many of my peers were criminalized and incarcerated for trying to survive by making money any way they could. When I was 19, I was arrested and convicted of several misdemeanors. When I got out of jail, as a part of the terms of my probation, I joined many youth employment programs, and I tried my best to support myself through non-criminalized legal work in food and service. Regardless of all the hard work I put in with these jobs, I still needed to sell drugs on the side to help pay my bills. Despite my skills and ambition, having a criminal background encourages many employers to still not hire me. So I've been over and underlooked when applying to better paying jobs. At one point, I found a job that hired me without prejudice of my status as a formerly incarcerated person, and they even offered me full-time employment with healthy benefits. When I lost that job and I suddenly lost my health insurance and found myself ineligible to receive unemployment. What seemed like a luxury of not having been discriminated against for my record at this job did not follow me into the new search for employment. I got back into the underground economy, but this time, I got back into the underground economy, but this time I was returning as a sex worker. In that moment, sex work offered me better paying employment than other hustles I had done, and I only picked up one part-time gig on the side to supplement. I came to a realization that no matter where I worked, I was going to have to work more than one job to survive. I found that working as a prostitute gave me an option to stick to just 2 gigs rather than 3 or 4 gigs to survive. Shortly after I began sex work, Trump became president and a law passed that pushed criminalization of sex work online even deeper. And the sites that I was using to advertise on were being shut down and censored. This made my work environment much more dangerous by pushing more sex workers onto the streets, making us even more vulnerable to violence. Women of color are more likely to work on the streets, making us the visible targets for arrest and harassment. When we are arrested for trying to survive, it creates and or adds a record that further hinders our chances at finding other employment, trapping us in poverty and prostitution. Many of the women I work with are mothers pushed into sex work to help support their families. This country's system is not set up for young, brown, queer, poor, formerly incarcerated, sex working people and countless others to thrive or survive in. All of these identities that should empower, inspire, and bring meaningfulness to my life have, in the very opposite, been twisted by the government to create barriers for me to reach my full potential of the quality of life that I and all poor people deserve as citizens of this world. This is not the world that we should have to live in. That's why there is a growing movement to decriminalize sex work and address the terrible injustices that sex workers face. I'm a part of that movement, and I hope that our movement is joined by others who are just impacted by poverty and criminalized every day for attempting to survive. If our families had access to the resources that we needed to support ourselves, we could leave prostitution and escape poverty altogether. We are living in the wealthiest country in the world, which has the resources to fund over $700 billion in a military defense budget. I know that together we can fight for those resources to be redistributed to help dismantle and abolish poverty for all. I'm really excited that we are able to gather here together and hopefully garner more support as we build a movement against poverty in full force. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, so much. Thank you for your bravery and sharing your story with us. And know that we are all workers. We make and produce everything, yet we're the only ones who have to continuously beg for what we're entitled to. That's another reason why we're here. Thank you for reminding us. And now we're going to hear from Anita Ross out of New Orleans. Miss Anita.
Unmute yourself.
Unmute, Anita.
Anita, unmute.
Where is she? Where is she? I can't find it. Okay, well, maybe while Anita finds a way to unmute, we can hear from Sydney, who's going to read the statement, the anonymous statement on housing.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
As she said, this is an anonymous testimony on housing. I live in a building that has what's called project-based Section 8 housing units. It's a rent subsidy program where renters pay about a third of our income towards rent, and the government makes up the difference. It's a very hard program to get into. Most of the waiting lists for these federally funded programs are long or closed. If I wasn't in this program, I would face homelessness. The market rents in the city where I live are unaffordable for many people, especially low-income people like me. So thousands of people are living on the streets as there are few rent-subsidized places available. Millions more units are urgently needed to confront the terrible housing crisis. But like other programs for poor people, there's a lot of onerous paperwork, rules, scrutiny, background checks, and tracking to get in and stay in the program. In the building I live in, most of the residents like me are immigrants. Every year we have to go through laborious processes to renew our rental contracts and other housing requirements. For each process, we're required to fill in forms, produce bank statements for 6 months, letters, proof of income, pay slips, unemployment benefit, etc. Every piece of income and asset we have are verified and scrutinized. The forms we sign say we're doing so under penalty of perjury. The fear that a simple mistake can cost us our housing makes the process very intimidating. There are rules under which we have to live to get this housing help, which require us to give up our right to privacy. For example, I'm required to report to the manager's office if anyone stays in my apartment for more than 15 days, or if a family member moves in or out. Also, the property managers check up on how you keep the apartment. Periodically, managers inspect the apartments to get a look at your housekeeping. There's an expectation that your unit will be sprayed for pest control every month, though you can refuse this if you get a doctor's note. I wonder if these practices are established in low-income buildings because poor people are somehow looked at as a public health risk. I had a family member move in last year, and we did the necessary reporting of the family income change that is required. You can face eviction if you don't report right away. A mistake was made by the housing manager in the calculation of the additional income. We got a threatening letter saying we owed thousands of dollars with a payment schedule attached, and a signature was required. We had to challenge the form unless the wording was changed because it was not accurate. The language in the form assumed the money was owed because the mistake was ours, that it was our fault. When we protested, we were told the form was computer generated and couldn't be changed. We persisted and they finally agreed with us. But it was scary because it was our word against the managers who ran the building. There's an additional worry when you live in project-based Section 8 housing, because if we did have to move out or would lose the rent, we would lose the rental assistance because it stays with the building. This is different to Section 8 vouchers, which you can take with you to your next place. There's a constant turnover of property managers. I've noticed that anyone who is friendly to the tenants and seems to want to help and be on our side gets removed. It's hard as you develop a relationship with the person and then they are gone. Everyone should be entitled to the right to housing and to the right to freedom from living in fear that you could lose that housing. I've joined with other poor and low-income people to fight for resources and an end to poverty, homelessness, and destitution.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for reading that for us, Sydney. There's been problems with housing ever since there was no room at the inn.
Really?
So we know we've been fighting a long fight. Have we been able to help Miss Anita get unmuted?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Anita Ross. I am originally from Detroit, Michigan, but have lived in New Orleans, Louisiana for the past 10 years. I am a member of the Welfare Rights Organization. I was a single mother and applied for help from welfare and food stamps. But little did I know that you had to give your whole life story about you and your children in order to get some kind of help. It was hard. I went to get a job, not paying much, and reported it as I was told to. It was just a minimum wage job. Instead of them helping me, they cut me off, and I had to struggle just to feed my children. It was many nights that I went hungry just so my kids could eat. I had to work over 40 hours just to pay rent and feed my children. All agencies refused to help me when I tried to work. Welfare does not give you enough to help, so you have to get a job. It is really a struggle trying to live on a little or nothing, struggling from day to day just to make ends meet. This causes you to make decisions on whether to lie or tell the truth in order to survive. You need 2 minimum wage jobs and Medicaid benefits just to survive. The system is designed for you to fail. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this organization and to help and build, to help others as myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a real good summation. The system is designed for us to fail. And we know, how do we know that? Because we know it's not designed in our interests. Okay, and now we're gonna close up this portion. Jane, we're gonna hear from Jane.
Hi,
Hi.
this is Jane Welford. I live in Berkeley now. And thank you for gathering us all together to hear our stories and what we want. In the early 80s, my son was an infant and the relationship I was in turned abusive. So I was getting hit and very sad and angry. Because of aid to families with dependent children, which was still in place then, I was able to leave and find a little house with a leaking roof in a village outside of town for $75 a month. And AFDC, it was formed in 1935 during the years of the Great Depression. And thank goodness it was still there at that point. I had a huge propane tank that heated the water and ran the stove. I had a cooking stove. I had a wood burning stove for heat, and I had to sort of put a barricade around that to protect my young son. And I wanted to raise my son. I was happy I was doing it. I knew it was the most important job, but I was also incredibly lonely there. And my older sister came to visit. She'd been living in California, and she talked me into packing up my old Volkswagen bus with my son and my cat and a few possessions and coming out to California. And the tube that ran the windshield, the defrosting in the windshield that we left in the winter, it had rusted and frozen, fallen off. So we had to stop at a motel on the way out to California. And we were able to do that anyway. And because we were in the middle of a snowstorm. In any case, I was able to get an increase in money and food stamps as the cost of living was higher than in New Mexico. I was on AFDC until my sons began kindergarten, and I was able to begin working doing house cleaning while he was at school. That way I could take him to school and pick him up afterwards. The Clintons destroyed AFDC in 1996 under the pretense of welfare reform, and that took everything away from women who wanted to raise their children and were in difficult situations, scary situations, and couldn't leave then. I can't begin to imagine the distress that some young women must be in today, having to decide whether or not to stay in a difficult situation so that they can keep raising their child or children on their own. If a woman now wants to get financial help from the government, she has to put her child in daycare and work at some crap job for 30 hours a week, a job that the government gives money to, subsidizes. This work of raising children, which makes life worth living, survival work, which holds communities and society together, is unrecognized and unwaged. The poverty that women suffer raising children on their own is violence. I've joined together with other women to fight back against this injustice and to have this crucial caring work be acknowledged and valued and paid. We're campaigning for a living wage for mothers and other caregivers, and we call for a care income for all caring work for people and the planet. It's based on the Green New Deal for Europe. Money for mothers, not for war. Every mother is a working mother. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much. And now, our final speaker for this segment is going to be Carolyn Hill. Carolyn, I know I just saw you.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, hi. My name is Carolyn Hill. I have 5 children. 2 are deceased. I've been on welfare, which had never been enough to live on. And if you got any increase or any other benefits, they will cut something else. In 1990, I was getting $335 every 2 weeks for myself and 5 children while living in Housing Authority House. And welfare benefits haven't increased in Pennsylvania since then. I had to take a job paying from $3.35 an hour up to $8 per hour, about 5 years before the work requirement, which meant I had to leave my preschool aged children with my oldest son and couldn't get home until after the older children were out of school. Because I wasn't around to keep an eye on them, my son got into trouble. My boys got into trouble, including selling drugs, ending up spending a couple of years in jail as a result. My daughter used to get home and get the mail before I did, which they were saying she was being absent because, wait, my daughter used to make sure I didn't get letters from school about her absence because she got home before me. My granddaughter was suffering from post-trauma due to the loss of her mother and had no one to go to school to go to on class trips with. Due to that fact, in fact, I had to be at these jobs, and she started acting out. I've been on disability since 2008. I went on this disability because I was injured on the job due to an accident. Then I became a kinship carer for my nieces and nephews. All agreed the children were doing well with me, but the child welfare department decided I was too poor and didn't have a GED, so they took the kids from me without warning, and I gave them gave them to a distant family member with more money. I fought back on my own and then got together at with others at the Crossroads Women's Center, where the Global Women's Strike in Philadelphia is based. We fought back together. We protested, we lobbied, we wrote letters. We fought all the way up to the Superior Court, but social workers lied on me, and my lawyer did not fight for me like he should have. We lost the case. I haven't seen my nieces since 2013. I've been doing caregiving work all my life. I cared for my grandmother, later for my mom, my brother, and other people's children. I had neighbors I cooked for, I went to the store for. I wasn't paid no money for none of these things. This work that I did for people. This is work I did for people. Now I'm with the Poor People's Campaign as part of Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike. We are fighting for money and other resources for mothers and others unpaid and low paid caregivers, and for a permanent child benefit to be paid directly to caregivers like me. I have done both unpaid and low paid work. I know that we are all workers. We are all urgent, uh, uh, ur- urgently need of $15 an hour at the very least, including those of us doing unpaid caregiving work. Money can be found for war and weapons, but not for low income women like me. I always remember Reverend Liz saying, when you lift from the bottom, everyone rise. And I am so glad to be a part of the movement here in Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Sister Carolyn.
Thank
And
you.
please accept our deepest condolences on the loss of your children.
Hmm. Thank you.
But this is a crime for which the system has yet to pay. but the work that you're doing and the people that you're doing the work with, that we are the answer. We are the answers that we've been looking for. We're the ones that we have to count on because we know that this system does not and has never met our needs or operated in our interests. That's the reason why all of the rules seem to work against us. So we know that this is not, it's not our fault, but it is our fight.
Yes.
So now we're going to hear a song, and it's the song that was actually developed and created by the Poor People's Campaign, by the people as they were riding the bus. They wanted to sing about the work that they were doing. I believe that we're getting ready to hear Rich Man's House. Am I not right? Okay, it looks like we're back. Okay, get that question. Okay, it looks like we're back. Ms. Mo, we're gonna remind people about joining welfare rights.
We can. Part of the outcome of these is just these are dramatic pieces of information that these young ladies, and all of them, no matter how old they are, that these young ladies are presenting to us this evening. And of course, to hear this is just damn painful. You know, have to lose our kids and have to have our kids separated. And, you know, I know that as this nightmare on the border goes on, everybody on this call today knows what that feels like, to have your kids snatched away from you and sent someplace else. So it's just tragic that it just has come to this, and this is not recent. This is not recent. What Miss Michelle is talking about is that at some point we're going to be asking people, if you feel this way, if you are clear that this system is something wrong with it, if you're angry about all of the things that have happened to you and all the things that have happened to other people, because now you see they ain't picking on you. This is just the way they deal with low income people. They ain't got no particular person. They hate us all, and it doesn't matter what color we are anymore. At one time, this almost looked like this was a black thing. And those of you that are still alive and on this call today, ain't nothing black about this here. This is about green. If you are low income and you can't take care of yourself, you're in trouble. They always use the race question to try to divide us. Always. That's one of their best tools. But this, at the end of the day, when everything is scraped away, this is about poverty. So at some point, we are going to want to talk to you all and ask you to consider becoming members of welfare rights. Now, Ms. Michelle, I talked with Marion about this earlier. We can't make that offer today. There are two things that are going on. There are additional truth commissions that'll be coming up between today's date and the 30th of June, which is the welfare rights anniversary. And we're going to have a major truth commission at that time. And part of the reason I'm not able to offer to these folks today to join welfare rights, I ain't sure they mad enough yet. You know, they may not be mad enough yet. You know, we done heard some difficult stuff. And it's not hard to tell the truth when you're in the room with everybody else. But, you know, everybody to join welfare rights, and, you know, that's my position all the time. You're going to have some backbone. You're going to have some courage. And you're going to have some determination. And I don't know yet whether or not the folks that have testified today, whether or not they got that. So I'm not asking anybody to join welfare rights tonight. I need you all to stay tuned, stay close. And by June 30th, it's only a couple of months away. If you're mad enough by then, because being a member of welfare rights is not just about testifying. You're going to be asked to study. You're going to be asked to read. You're going to be asked to get involved in some stuff that you ain't never seen before. And most of it is legal. You heard me when I said that. Most of it is legal. So between now and June the 30th, when we make that call to ask people, would you consider joining this union, the National Welfare Rights Union? You better think about it. Because if you become one of us, people have labeled us as being crazy at times. You have no idea how crazy we can get in welfare rights. You have no idea. So between now and then, keep that in mind. We're going to deal with this on the 30th of June and see if you ready to, what's that song? Are you ready to throw down? And we'll deal with it at that time. Thank you, Michelle.
Why, thank you, Ms. Mo. No, I can always count on you. Okay. So hope you're all ready for the next group of people testifying. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, we got a poem. We got another song and a poem for you. Ms. Viola, are you doing the song? No.
I think we have
No.
a poem. Rick.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
Rick.
I'm sorry. We didn't decide on that song, so I didn't know. So okay.
Well, thank you. Okay,
Thank you, Michelle.
but we are gonna hear some sartorial rendition from Rick of a poem. Many of you have heard the word, but the poem is called Invictus. And Rick?
Good evening, everybody. I learned this poem years ago, and it really fit where the place my head was when I heard it. My head doesn't stay that way all the time, and so here it is. But I'm on the Welfare Rights Board, and I'm glad to be there. I'm glad to be a part of this fight. This looks like it is the real fight. And so,
Okay.
And out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fair clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloodied but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shed, and yet the menace of the years find and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gauge, how charged the punishment of the stroll. I am the captain of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
I'm the master of my faith. I'm the captain of my soul.
And a revolutionary wrote that just before he was getting ready to be killed.
So y'all can see it on the screen. So I hope you take note of it and use it, because it's what we were saying. We can't rely on these folks with these titles to resolve our problems. They're never a priority. So we've already decided this is their answer. We're not waiting on you all anymore because you've proven that you're incapable and incompetent to meet our needs. We keep telling you what we need, but you don't listen. So we're not waiting for you anymore. All right. All right. So now in the next round, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Ms. Vine. Thank you, everybody. I want to introduce the next set of people testifying and sharing their histories. We have Ms. Margaret Prescott is going to be reading an anonymous testimony on benefits out of Oakland, California. We did have Jacqueline Johnson on the program from LA, but I understand that she's not doing well, so she probably is not going to be joining us. We have Tree from Pennsylvania, Vicky from Gardena, California, Nancy Berlin from LA, Pat Albright from PA, and Miss Eugenia out of Detroit. So next we should hear from Ms. Margaret Prescott on benefits in reading an anonymous testimony.
Right, and just to clarify, Jackie Johnson, though not feeling well, she is on and hopes to be able to give her testimony. And just to explain the anonymous testimony, this is the second one we have had. We've had to do that for security reasons. I'm sure you all could fill in the lines and understand the situation. So I'm going to be reading this anonymous statement written by someone about her experience. Being diagnosed with anorexia and depression is part of the journey of my life. I never thought Black people could be anorexic, but after losing half of my body weight in less than a year, I was hospitalized for bradycardia, a slow heartbeat, a classic symptom of eating disorders. When I became disabled, I was unable to work and then became homeless after being foreclosed on by Chase Bank. So I applied for general assistance. It was during the interview with the general assistant worker that I was determined to be disabled and exempt from working. General assistance is around $350 a month in Alameda County, California, and is limited to 3 months out of 12 unless you are disabled from working. Since she determined that I was disabled, I was able to receive the benefit year round. I started receiving food stamps at that time, around $190 a month. As I sought mental health services, I had a very hard time getting a useful assessment and treatment in Oakland, California. I contacted a psychiatrist in San Francisco who agreed to help me, but I had to be a resident of San Francisco. When I looked into it, San Francisco paid a higher general assistance and food stamp amount. I found a friend who let me use their address to establish residency. It was the right thing to do. The services were better. The benefits was better. I found a Black woman therapist who I developed a good rapport with. It was the right thing to do for my health and my well-being. In the meantime, I was applying for Social Security disability income. I was denied twice and had to file for a hearing to appeal their decision. That process took over 2 years before an administrative law judge ruled in my favor. Before that decision was rendered, I was contacted by San Francisco County asking why I was shopping and banking in Oakland. They were monitoring all my transactions vis-a-vis the benefits card. They began sending a worker to my San Francisco address to see if I lived there, questioning my housemates about my comings and goings. He scheduled a meeting where I had to show him where I slept, where I kept my food. He asked me about where my shoes were and to show him mail that I received there. Shortly thereafter, I terminated my benefit because I got on SSDI. It was a harrowing experience. I worried that I was going to be charged with fraud and land in jail, lose my housing and income. It was not good for my mental health, which was already fragile. Through this process, I thankfully had a loving community of people who didn't give up on me, even though my behavior was strange and I felt alienated from them. They didn't allow me to isolate. They encouraged me to accept medical and legal help. Reluctantly, I did both, and both helped. I learned that people who have legal representation get approved for SSDI at twice the rate of people who don't have legal representation. As I recovered, I began organizing with others to demand that the needs of poor people be addressed and policies that create and keep us in poverty be replaced with ones that support life. On the journey through the legal, social service, and healthcare systems, I encountered so many other women, Latinx, Asian, Muslim, immigrant, moms, grandmas, all of us on common ground, seeking resources to meet our basic needs. In my organizing with the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and the Global Women's Strike, I'm in solidarity with millions of people across the country, and we refuse to be silent anymore. Thank you. Okay, Sister Michelle.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Margaret. Okay, and now we'll get here from Jackie Johnson. Jackie, I'm glad that you felt well enough to join us. We cherish you. You go. Unmute yourself. Oh yeah, you need it. Can we get help unmuting Jackie? Trying to get that button, huh? Carolyn, can you unmute her?
No, Carolyn can't.
Can you
Maybe
hear
we
me
could-
now?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, great.
I'm
Go ahead.
unmuted.
We can
Thank
hear
you.
I see General Baker
Okay.
up there.
No, it's General Baker.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I had 3 instances that caused me to need and be denied benefits. The first was death, which was my husband before the age of 40, and me being the sole responsibility of our 3 young children. There was a problem with identifying his body because of the accident. There was denial of benefits because they were showing that I had the adequate income. And when I explained that his income was part of what kept us going, it was suggested that maybe I could move to a cheaper place, buy less expensive food, and, just move into a neighborhood that was more conducive to my income at the time. It reminded me of Claudine, which I tried to watch the other night, and I actually started crying because it was like that. I was trying to work and take care of my children, and there was somebody telling me how I should do it so I wouldn't have to get any help or money from them. The second occasion was cancer. I developed or had thyroid cancer and was treated for that. When I lost my job that had the insurance, I was given, I think it's called Medi-Cal. I didn't know not only who, because I'd always had insurance anyway. It was difficult because if you found somebody that took Medicaid, you still had to pay, it was an 80-20 payment, like they would pay 80%. And some procedures cost hundreds of dollars and lab tests and all of that. So I didn't have that 20%. A lady from Syria who started a program called Access helped me to go to a clinic that only charged me the 80%. So whatever they were paying, that's what they were billing. So that was my second incident with that. So of course I applied for food stamps, and I can honestly say that this was about 4 years ago, and I was granted $15 a month. And since that time, it is now 19. So I have moved up in the world. And the third was just trying to have benefits to help, because the third thing was age. You know, it was like I'm at the age where I can get around, but I could get around better if I had access and a lot of other things. So I think that in being denied benefits or welfare or given the rights that I should have been afforded, it made me committed to not only finding out what was available and how to go about getting it, but committing myself to helping other people become aware of what could be done. And I became a commissioner. I chaired a commission for human rights for the city of Santa Ana, and represented the state on the Community Actions, Community Association of Human Rights Organizations. And my whole wanting to say thank you for today is because I am determined that if anybody's going through what I've been through, I want to be able to provide some information, some uplifting, or something that can just help somebody. And I thank the National Human Rights, Welfare Rights, Global Women's Strike, and all that know that we're in this to make a difference by being the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you. I'm glad that you were able to make it and share your testimony with us. It's also an indication that it doesn't matter what title you give us, we're all workers. And what we're fighting for is not something that we're begging for, asking for charity. We have earned every iota of what we're asking for. And so we're tired of asking, especially since we're tired of asking the folks who are part of the group, part of the system profiting off of our misery. That's not acceptable, and we're not taking it anymore. And with that, we're going to hear from Tree.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Teresa Muldrow. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In 1995, I was a mother of 3 sons, aged 6, 10, and 13, and had a full-time paid job. My husband and I were separated. I became seriously ill, was hospitalized. My medical bills were over $100,000. I left my job and applied for medical assistance, food stamps, and Social Security disability for me and my children. Whenever my health permitted, I worked part-time, and with my SSD payments, we were then ineligible for food stamps. I was often too ill to work, so my income was quite unstable. Also, in the following 4 years, we had to move 4 times to 3 different counties to escape domestic abuse. My kids changed schools 3 times. I was again hospitalized numerous times. Social services started investigating the boys' welfare. Anytime I was able, I found part-time jobs. I constantly had to calculate work hours, wages, and raises to stay within SSD income limits. Once a Christmas bonus put me $3 over the limit. I lost all my payments and SSD eligibility and had to be recertified. Because of all the moves and illness, I frequently had to change jobs and reapply for benefits. This was exhausting. When my oldest son obtained his first legitimate job at 15, his wages were counted in our family income. Our food stamps were cut and our medical assistance threatened. After my 2 oldest turned 18 and their Social Security payments ended, I could no longer afford rent. I had to agree for my youngest son to stay with his dad. I was working part-time and homeless. I feared for the welfare of my sons. I moved in with my parents who were in failing health. Their medical assistance, LAHEAP, and energy assistance was endangered because the state wanted to include my income in their household income. I had to move out. When my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I was able to become a paid home health care worker for him. I quit my job to care for my parents. But when my father was enrolled in adult daycare, my paid care hours were reduced to 3 hours per day. After my parents died, I found out that the state was planning to take their home through the home waiver program. My parents had never said anything about this to me. In fact, they had left their house to me and my kids in their wills. However, the state could not prove that they had ever signed the waiver, and with legal help, I was given the title to the house. I lived there for over 2 years until I too became disabled to care for a large house. I applied for low-income senior housing, but was told I would not qualify if I owned a house in the 2 years prior to my application. I had to legally transfer the title to my son and wait 2 more years until I was able to qualify for subsidized senior housing where I live today. My story is not unique, nor is it anywhere near the worst for people who receive government benefits. It is only an example of how people can fall into poverty and are constantly held down in it by eligibility restrictions and requirements that make an increase or addition in one form of aid reduce or eliminate another. This is merely a brief outline of my story. All throughout our struggle with governmental systems, we encountered blatant systemic isms, racism, sexism, ableism, ageism, and great disparities from county to county, zip code to zip code. I believe that every mother wants to raise their children in a safe living environment where they can be happy, healthy, resourceful, and confident of a positive future. That is why I have become an advocate and work with the women of color in the Global Women's Strike and the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, to get the hard work of caregiving acknowledged and rewarded. All people need to feel that doing your best is good enough, and your life and the lives of all others are to be valued, respected, and protected. We should not be made to feel that being poor makes us bad or lazy or immoral. Being poor should not doom us. Being poor is not a crime, but being held captive in poverty is a societal crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Tree. You said it. We are not guilty for being poor. It's the system that has the problem, because the system has all of the resources that we try and trust to them to meet our needs. And they do everything they can to keep us confused, ignorant, frightened, and alone. So we won't see that it's the system itself that is keeping us in poverty. Thank you for sharing with us. Next, we will hear from Nancy Berlin. No, take it back. Before Nancy, Vicky from Gardena, California.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, I'm Vicky. I would like to say thank you to everyone that invited me to speak, and it is an honor. I will start my story off. I was a young mother in 1977 when I had my first child, a daughter. I tried to work part-time for Wendy's, Del Taco, since I didn't have much help from her dad at that time. I started receiving AFDC while working, but I was told either I live on part-time money or accept AFDC. I decided to take AFDC, and it helped me be a very good mother. I was going back and forth with my children's dad as we decided to try to raise our daughter together. But that did not work out because he would be out all times of day and night. In between fighting and not getting along, then I found out I was carrying my second daughter. I stayed on AFDC, which allowed me to spend more time making sure my daughters got the best education. I also applied for community development housing. And while I waited, I moved into Imperial Courts housing in Los Angeles for 2 years. I finally got a call that my name came up on the list in 1985. I moved into a brand new 3-bedroom place for me and my 3 daughters. The rent was based on my income from AFDC. I was finally able to raise them without asking and waiting for help from their father. I help my daughters every day with their reading, writing, math, and I put them in magnet programs, schools, and after-school programs. Their education was very important to me, and I devoted myself to it. As my daughters got a little older, I worked as a certified nurse assistant from 11 to 7 in the morning to make sure they got to school on time. Education was my main focus. My oldest daughter was second in her high school class in 1995 and became salutatorian. She was the first to graduate from college in our family. She went to Clark Atlanta University, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. She went on to receive a master in engineering. My second daughter graduated with honors from high school and went to college, Morris Brown College in Atlanta, Georgia, and received 2 master's degrees in education. My third daughter was very ambitious, very good with math, and became a student body president in the 6th grade and also her senior year of high school. She graduated from Cal State Dominguez Hills. Receiving AFDC enabled me to help my daughters do well in school and be successful adults. Every child, no matter the race or whether they grew up poor, has the right to a good education. I help out taking care of my children as much as I can, and I assist young mothers to connect with resources they need. Through my work with Hunger Action Los Angeles, through my work with Global Women Strike, I work to change the system that keeps family poor. I would just like to end to say that I know it's very hard for me as a mother, but my way out was educating my daughters and making sure they didn't have to struggle as hard as I did. And I'm very thankful, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know you all aren't lucky enough to be able to see, but one of the things that she sent with her testimony was this wonderful picture of her family. And we want to congratulate you on the success that you've had with your daughters. And you're right, when you educate a woman, you educate the world. So we thank you for holding on to that commitment to education and giving us 2 more educated fighters to help us with this struggle. Thank you, thank you. And next, we will hear from Nancy Berlin from LA. Nancy?
Yes, hello.
Hey.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Nancy Berlin. I moved to California looking to escape a difficult family situation. It turned out to be harder than I thought to find work and a place to live. I ended up working as a cook's assistant at a sorority at UCLA. The pay wasn't much, and then when I got my first paycheck, I found out that they deducted my meals from my wages, and I realized it was barely enough to get by. I moved 3 times that year, finally ending up sleeping in the living room of some people I'd met. My only meals were the ones I ate at work, making weekends especially tough. Then when the school year ended, I was laid off, and with so many other people looking for work, I couldn't find anything at all. I picked up a few odd jobs, but my housemates finally told me that I had to start contributing more or I couldn't stay. They gave me till the end of the month and suggested I tried getting help at the welfare office, something I knew next to nothing about. Not having the bus fare, I walked the 3 miles to the welfare office where I waited most of the day to be seen. The worker said she couldn't provide any help that day and handed me a stack of forms to fill out and to come back in a week. In the meantime, I had to go to the unemployment office to prove I wasn't eligible to get those benefits. Worse, I had to have a humiliating conversation with my housemates, explaining to them that the welfare office wanted to be sure that no one else would be eating the food that my food stamps would buy. That would be fraud, I was told. And so we would need to label the shelves in our kitchen, and my food would have to go on separate shelves with my name on it. My housemates reluctantly agreed to this and to wait another week, but said if I didn't have more to contribute, I'd need to leave. The following week, I once again walked to the welfare office and waited for hours. Finally, I was called in to see the worker. She shuffled through my papers and then said, "Oh, there's one more form you need to go get from your former employer before we can get you any benefits." I said, "But you didn't tell me that last week." And she answered, "Well, I'm telling you now. You need to get that and come back next week. I can't help you today." At that point, something gave inside me. I couldn't go back to the house empty-handed. I didn't have anywhere else to go. So I told her I wasn't leaving. I had nowhere else to go. She had to help me. She yelled that I needed to leave right away, but I refused to budge. She called her supervisor and the welfare department director. They repeated that I needed to leave immediately, but I just pleaded with them to help, and I stayed put. Then they called the police. I was terrified. I thought, could they arrest me? Will I end up in jail for being poor? The police officer wanted to know what was going on. The welfare office workers told their story. I told mine. And then, weirdly, the officer said, "You called us to deal with her? Why don't you just give her some food stamps and I'll escort her out?" Which is what happened. A half hour later, I was out on the curb with my food stamps and an appointment to come back for my general relief check. As I walked home, I thought about all the other people in the welfare office that day. There were elderly people, sick people, crying children, and I wondered about how they managed waiting all day and how they got by on the meager benefits given out begrudgingly. I made a promise to myself to do something to change the system. I joined the Los Angeles Welfare Rights Organization and helped to put together a Know Your Rights guide. I'm now active with Global Women's Strike and the Poor People's Campaign because these problems still exist. There are more than 140 million low-income people in this country, and we will not be ignored.
All right. Fighting words, we love it. Thank you. I have to say to you all, after reading the testimonies, I wanted to see those folks that I didn't know who were testifying, because I know the struggles, but I wanted to see the faces that fought, that stared down an unjust system and made them do what they're supposed to do. Okay, next we're going to hear from Pat Albright, Pennsylvania. Pat, we know you got a story.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Pat Albright. I'm a low-income single mother with a disability and a former welfare recipient and senior who is part of the Every Mother is a Working Mother network, organizing for our work as mothers and caregivers to be valued and paid for. Laid off from a disco light factory in my 20s, I collected unemployment compensation for a couple of years. When it ran out, I was fortunate there were welfare benefits available in Pennsylvania at that time, the General Assistance, or GA, for single people out of wage work. Little as it was a lifeline for me. In the early 1980s, I joined with welfare rights activists in a takeover of the state capitol rotunda in Harrisburg to fight proposed cuts in general assistance. We spent days in the rotunda, sleeping overnight, hanging laundry on chandeliers. But we were unable to stop the cuts. Some 64,000 so-called able-bodied GA recipients were thrown off the welfare rolls. In 2012, the GA was eliminated entirely. Fortunately, I was able to continue on general assistance until my application for Social Security disability insurance was approved. This is no longer the case. The GA was reinstated in 2018, thanks to the grassroots movement that fought for it. But it was eliminated again in 2019. Eliminating GA disproportionately impacts people of color and the most vulnerable of us, including, in addition to those of us with disabilities, domestic violence victims, young people aging out of foster care, family caregivers, people in drug or alcohol program, veterans, and people getting out of prison. The fight in Pennsylvania to reinstate the GA continues. We are also fighting for an increase in TANF benefit levels, which outrageously, as Carolyn said, have not been increased even for inflation since 1990. And also fighting for an end to TANF work requirements and time limits. We refuse to be divided into deserving and undeserving, quote unquote, poor. We are all deserving, we all make contributions to society, we are all workers. I've been involved in the effort to expand child tax credits, as in the Biden relief package, making these fully refundable and available to all mothers and other primary caregivers. This money will make a huge difference, but it must go directly to the mothers or primary caregivers as the best assurance that children will eat and help mothers protect themselves from domestic violence. 1 in 4 women are victims of domestic violence. It could have made a difference to me as my son and I struggle to survive on an income below the poverty line, inadequate as that is even still. And we are fighting to make the child tax credit a permanent child cash benefit, as most Western countries have, the US being a notable exception. We are also pressing for the passage of the Worker Relief and Credit Reform Act, which expands and modernizes the Earned Income Tax Credit, or EITC, to redefine workers to include mothers, other unpaid family caregivers, and students, making them eligible for the EITC. This bill will be reintroduced by Congresswoman Gwen Moore in the present Congress. This would get money to the 53 million unpaid family caregivers in the US, helping not only those doing the caring, but those being cared for as well. Finally, the Every Mother's a Working Mother network has become part of the growing international movement for a care income for people and planet. The bond between mothers and other primary caregivers and our children, and the bonding of humans with the earth that sustains us all, must be honored and made central. Our survival is at stake. I'm glad for this opportunity to add my story to the National Welfare Rights Union Truth Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, I don't know, we don't have the capacity to show the applause, but we thank you for sharing your story, not just sharing the struggle, but sharing the fight back, because that's where we all are. We all got to fight. And Maureen was saying, not ready to recruit for members because she didn't think people were angry enough yet. I don't know about everybody else, but I know I'm mad. I'm madder than I can't use the word in polite company or online, but I'm really pissed. Has Eugenia made it to GBI yet? Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, she made it. All right. Okay, so we put you on last like you asked, so now we're ready for you.
Okay. All right. And this is my statement, so I'll just get right to it. Again, my name is Eugenia Darnell. I'm a longstanding member of Michigan Welfare Rights Organization. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and I've worked in and out of the healthcare field now for about a little over 28 years. My jobs have ranged from customer service, retail, automotive plants, nursing homes, hospitals, laboratories, group homes, and private duty caregiving. I currently own and operate my own small home healthcare business, and I've been the administrator of for over 9 years now. I pretty much have seen it all and done it all. It is in this opinion and spirit that I say, quote, caregivers are the backbone of the healthcare industry, yet they are the least paid and the most overworked group in working class society. They have the most responsibility, they work some of the longest hours, and are the least respected or acknowledged for the work that they are tasked to do. They are literally assigned to care for and protect people's lives, yet cannot get a raise to increase their pay to a livable working wage. Now, please note here that even the $15 minimum wage hike over the next 4 years that's being so hotly contested and debated by our government, that's not nearly enough to begin to compensate. The fact remains that they are the most likely group to still have to seek additional assistance and resources, and I mean food stamps, medical insurance, etc., even though they have a job. Typically, the majority of caregivers are living paycheck to paycheck with little to no savings, 401k, or retirement benefit plan. Their work days can be anywhere from 8 to 16 hours a day. Some work 7 days a week with no off day. In certain instances, a caregiver can have up to 2, sometimes 3 jobs just to try to make it equal the pay of 1. That's good paying. A day on the job can be having 7 to 10 clients on your schedule that have to be cared for. And on certain days, you can have at least 1/3 to 1/2 of scheduled staff not showing up for work and or calling off, which then makes the workload even harder and heavier for the ones that did come in. This cycle can quickly lead to fatigue, exhaustion, low morale, etc. And that in turn boils over into eventual frustration and anger, which if not resolved can spill over into patient care. The turnover rates are at a constant high in settings like these. If you ask the average caregiver what a day in the life looks like, they will probably tell you some of the things I've just mentioned above and then some. There's a lot more that I could say, but I will be here all day and all night sharing and telling you facts, stories, instances about this particular subject. So I will end my testimony here. Understand this is but a glimpse into the world of caregivers. We as a nation should do and can do more to support and care for those who care for us. P.S. Bear in mind that these were and are the same people who were asked to step up when the pandemic hit and continued working, further putting not only their lives, but the lives of their loved ones at risk. Thank you so much. Eugenia Darnell, signing off.
All right, all right. I hope everybody who is watching this can agree with us that this has been a sterling panel. People who have come out to share their history, their pain, and their fight back with us. What they're sharing is what all of us who don't know need to learn. That we are the workers. We're the ones who make and produce everything. Everything. It's not an issue of shortages that we don't have things. We worked on a hunger conference, and what we found is that this country throws away as much food as we consume. It's not a matter of scarcity that we have hunger. It's a system that wants to profit off of the food that we need to live. And that's not acceptable. We're the ones who plant the food, harvest the food, process it. And then when we try to consume it, we can't afford to eat it. There's something wrong with that. That's not a system that, and somebody is making a profit off of that. Clearly there's a hole in the system. And that hole is what we are pointing to. And it is wide. And all of us can make our way through that. But what we're going to do when we go through that hole is that we're going to fix it, we're going to shore it up, and we're going to make sure that everybody, and we mean everybody, has what we need. There's no reason for us not to, and we intend to see that we all get it. Now, we're going to take a brief break so that the commissioners, and I'll name them for you in a moment, so that our commissioners can get together. And I hope all of y'all got the instructions. Our commissioners can get together on their dedicated line? Okay, well, I don't have it now. But anyway, so that they, oh, here it is. So the people can get together on their dedicated line. That number is 302-202-1108. That's 302-202-1108. Access code 863625. So we're looking for you to get on that call. And in the meantime, the rest of us are going to have the pleasure of hearing from, we're going to hear a powerful poem. Well, first, I take it back. What? I'm going to,
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
How long, at what time do you want the commissioners to return?
I would love to have you all back by 8:50, but I'll take you at 8:53.
Are you saying, and I'm looking at it now, is that 10 minutes or less?
10 minutes or less.
That's, oh, you want, okay, well, that would be 13 minutes if you're doing it by 8:50.
Okay, we'll come back in 10 minutes.
I'm sorry?
I said, we'll try to come back in 10 minutes because there may be other things that you want to address before we close out.
That sounds like a good idea. And in the meantime, we're going to hear a song from Ciara.
Okay, the commissioners, let's make that call now and I'll go back on mute.
All right, thank you so much.
Look for me and I'll be there. We are the National Union of the Homeless, and we're taking front houses against it. Forget about it being against the law. I don't care. Yeah, I'm dying in the streets. I think that's against the law.
Get down, get down, get down, get down. Music's too loud. Look for me, look for me. Look for me, look for me. Look for me. Look for me. This is another great success. Look for me. All the homeless people come together and they show us that
You're on mute, Michelle. Michelle, you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. I was saying, wow. I loved it. I love that piece. Thank you so much, Sierra, for that, sharing it with us. Definitely helps to keep us fired up. And talking about keeping us fired up, we want to hear from Sabine Adiba. She was actually going to testify, but because she's also a poet, she agreed that we could incorporate her testimony in the write-up of this forum, and that she would get the opportunity to share her struggle through her poetry, which I understand is quite powerful and speaks for her. So Sabine, I know I saw you on there earlier. I'm just jumping around on here.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm blessed.
Hi. Welcome, sister.
Thank you. I am also a member of Global Women's Strike. DCFS, Give Us Back Our Children.
All right.
Title of this poem is Kidnapping by Deception. Kidnapping by deception for material gain, dividing poor families, a colonial game, stealing our babies, deleting cultural names. Greed don't justify oppressive pain. Unified regimes is what this army needs. Stop closing your eyes while our dynasty bleeds. Stop sitting on your hands, waiting on politicians to fill old demands. Child Protective Services sitting behind desks, spitting slippery lies, feeding Jim Crow, breaking tribal ties. My prose too salty? Catch you unaware? Kidnapping by deception is a treacherous snare. Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe. Thank you, Sabrina. Ashe.
You're very welcome.
Hey, Ashe, thank you, sister. Margaret was telling the truth. Your poetry is powerful. Your words are powerful, whatever form they come into us in. So thank you so much for sharing that. Just to let everybody know, we've got all kinds of ways of getting our stories out. We should take advantage of every one of them. And thank you so much. I want us to begin, well, as I could hear the commissioners in the background because they're being loud, but they're gonna be coming back shortly. But before they do, I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody who has testified this evening and shared your struggle, your pain, and your fight back. It is so powerful to see these examples of people just like us who have survived the very things that many of us are still finding ways to survive through, and finding a way to thrive despite this unjust exploitative system that would like nothing more than to keep us down, keep us confused, keep us giving up. But I didn't see anybody there who had given up, no matter how painful and how awful the struggles are that everybody's been through. It is so critical that people understand that we have been fighting and resisting ever since we have found that we were in struggle, which is not that, most of us find it out fairly early, but it doesn't matter where it is we find out. But once we find out and realize that we're in struggle, then we're fighting back. And that is the important part for everyone to understand, that it's not our fault, but it is our fight. And we will not leave until we win. And we intend to win, because this is a life and death struggle, and it's our lives, it's our work, and we will not have it disrespected anymore, because there is dignity in work, as those who would exploit ours would learn if they ever got around to doing any of it. So it looks like our commissioners have come back. Commissioners, I was just thanking all of our testifiers for sharing their stories with us. And now we hope that you're going to offer us some words of wisdom, or if you have any questions, that they'll be brief and that you'll issue them now. So, okay, who are we going to hear from from the commissioners? Is that Ms. Mo?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We hear you well.
I am zooming on buttons that I have never zoomed on before. So let's see. Okay. These are some of the highlighted points that the commissioners lifted in terms of what our reflections are. And that is, there is tremendous pressure on low-income people to try to get us to live within the boundaries of government benefits. That's not possible. There was a statement made that talks about the squeaky wheel gets the oil, okay? And that is fighting back produces results. Okay, somebody's asking me to start my video there. All right, and we'll see. All right, we'll get back to that. Commissioners have suggested that all of these stories are indicative of economic and human rights violations. They are all indicative of that. And I think we all agree. Our commissioners have suggested that every story was another example of how human rights and economic rights were being violated. Every single story highlighted that, whether it was about having your children taken away, or the food stamps were not enough, or the housing situation didn't present itself correctly, police authorities called into our lives, all of these things that we all have experienced. And all of these things are directly tied to the fact that we're low income, poor workers, in between jobs, good jobs when we can find them, but because we are of a certain class, we suffer just because we're low income. Commissioners have suggested that there are systems that are involved in the continuous abuse and exploitation of poor people. And that again is an example, a reason, a rationale for having police in our lives, police showing up and having to make decisions about how we go forward. In the end, what we have all decided is that we'll let everybody know that all of these testimonies and everything has been recorded. We're going to collectivize all of these things, annotate all of these things, identify, not necessarily name by name, but identify the essence and the words that were used by our testifiers. And we're going to take these things to the United Nations. We're going to take these stories to The Hague. We're going to take these stories to the Human Rights Commission and some of these international and national organizations. And I dare say some of them may even end up with colleagues in other parts of the world, where we can tell folks all of this conversation about United States being the richest country in the world, that's smoke and mirrors. There's a ton. I think one of our testifiers talked about 140 million people that live at or below the poverty level. And that's the experience, like James Brown says, welcome to America. And we've heard that many times. The framework that the Truth Commission is bound up in is very important for our testifiers to get a real sense of what that is. I'll just read this quick statement and then I'll turn this back over to our Madam Chair. Truth Commissions are a tool used by the National Welfare Rights Union to collectivize and offer testimony from witnesses to economic human rights violations that have happened to them directly. These lived experiences bring clarity and unify the testifiers in a way that proves that they are victims of similar events, which discredits the myth of individual responsibility for their individual plights. Low-income people are often told that the reason for their situations is because of the choices that they made. They chose the wrong complexion, the wrong nationality, the wrong partner, the wrong path of education. They chose the wrong neighborhood to live in. All of these bad choices are the reasons for their living conditions and their poverty, which means it is their own fault. Framing these events from an economic human rights perspective helps to reveal the truth about the origins of these lived experiences expressed in testimony given by different persons. Using this instrument is critical to our understanding as we view these social justice violations through the lens of a class analysis. Our human condition is connected to our class connection. We are working class people, oppressed and violated by the 1% who are the corporate class, who live only for profits at our expense. Caretakers, school teachers, bus drivers, social workers, fast food workers, factory workers, restaurant workers, etc. We are all working for a living, and some get paid while others don't, but we are still workers and part of the working class, even if we are in between jobs. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights document defines what the rights are of every human being: the right to a decent standard of living, the right to be protected from harm, the right to be cared for if injured or sick, the right to be fairly paid for work done, the right to rest, the right to access education, and special rights are even given to women and children. Nations read and agreed to adopt these economic human rights, and these are the demands we stand on today as we present this Truth Commission. Madam Chair, I give it back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Mo. And I want to thank the commissioners, Maureen Taylor, Brianna Parker, Larry Bresler, Willie Baptist, and Rick Tingling Clemons for their valiant work in trying to summarize the sterling testimonies that we heard here today. We want to thank our tech team. Margaret, you want to jump in? I know you have the part of the thank you list. So we want to make sure we get everybody.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. Just a fantastic job shepherding us along there. And I wonder if Moni, are you there as well? Moni, are you going to go through the thank you list?
Yes. So yes, thank you so much to everyone. I feel so honored and moved to be here doing this work with you all. So we want to share some gratitude and thanks. Thank you to our testifiers and commissioners. Thanks to everyone for being here. Thanks to the National Welfare Rights Union National Board. Thanks to Carolyn Baker and the General Baker Institute. Colleen Wessel McCoy. Thanks to the People's Forum. Kristen Nicely Colangelo, Sierra Taylor, and many, many thanks to Margaret Prescott for all that you do and did here today. And back to you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Moni, my sis there in Oregon. So we are all around the country today. This brings us to the end of our Truth Commission. You know, we have been talking about this Truth Commission as a mini Truth Commission leading up. You heard Sister Maureen talk about what we'll be doing at the end of June, I think, for marking the anniversary of the National Welfare Rights Organization. And it wasn't said, but at least one of our testifiers actually worked with Johnny Tillman out of Watson, California. So we lift her work up. We lift up Beulah Sanders, Annie Smart. I mean, all of those who have gone along and made the way for us, those who are still with us, the Reverend Annie Chambers and so many others. You know, I feel so honored and privileged to be representing our women's network, the Global Women's Strike, with the work we're doing here with the National Welfare Rights Union and the welcome that we have received, and the fact that we feel that in this space, we understand that we are all workers, as Michelle said. We understand whether we are low paid, whether we are unpaid, that we are producing everything in the world. We're producing all of the workers in the world. We accept each other and we are working our way together. So there's a way in which we feel, whether we're on welfare, we're moms, that we're not excluded, because so often in so many places we're forgotten and people get kind of hung up on a particular space and forget that indeed most of the world is unwaged. I just want to wrap things up here, and it wouldn't be worth my salt as a person who works not only in the US, but also globally. We want to lift up Haiti today. Haiti today is a day of international solidarity with grassroots strugglers in Haiti. We always have to lift them up, our sisters and brothers in Palestine, the farmers in India who've been on strike and giving it to Modi, that friend of Trump, where 71% of the women of the agricultural workers are women, to our sisters and brothers in Thailand who are working so hard and are under threat, Honduras, of Venezuela, wherever we are coming together. We are all workers, and the National Welfare Rights Union lift up that union, because right now we're throwing it down and saying we want what's ours, and we're coming to get it. So thank you so very much for joining us. And thank you, Michelle and Rick. We stole that slogan from them.
That's all right.
We want what's ours,
passing it
and we're
on.
coming to get it. Thank you so very much. You all please stay safe and go to the National Welfare Rights Union website. please, to get information, put your name and email in the chat if you want to remain in touch with us, because we're determined we're going to continue this work. And I can't end by lifting up our national chair, our Marion Kramer, who, I don't know how Marion does it. She had a medical procedure today. I know she's listening to this. Marion, we love you. And we appreciate the leadership and the direction that you have given us. And after the National Welfare Rights Organization was no longer there, you took up the reins with the National Welfare Rights Union. And we honor you and we lift you up. Thank all of the testifiers who worked so hard. And Marion is listening. I understand. It certainly was an honor and a blessing. You all, please stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Keep on fighting, and let's stay together and let's stay in touch. Thank you so very much. And thank Michelle. You were fantastic. Viola, we got to thank Viola, our timekeeper. Viola out of New Orleans, right? All righty. Take care.
Remember, folks, we will win.
Yep.
Absolutely.
We get what we organized to take. Okay, Carol, tell us when we can log off.
Sister Maureen, thank you.
Go now.
Great panel.
All right, be talking to y'all. Keep up the fight.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Right. Carolyn, can we log off yet?
For more
no, there it is. There's our slide. It's beautiful with our logo in the middle.
All right. Yep. All right. All right.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
All righty. Talk with you all soon.
Good night.
Love and power. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Pleasure meeting all y'all.
Yes.
See you on the front lines.
I'm telling you, it seems like folks don't want to go.
Hey.
Y'all in